text this morning is from Luke 21. And I want to tell you that this is the lectionary text for today. Debated long and hard whether to use this one. And I'll tell you why in a moment. But I did choose to do it. So let's look at it. Luke 21:5 through 21:19. Some of his disciples, Jesus' disciples, were remarking about how the temple was adorned with beautiful stones and with gifts dedicated to God. Now, since chapter 19, Jesus has had encounters within the temple. And one of the things that stands out of all those encounters is that Jesus has come to reform the temple, not reform it, remake it, deliver it, redeem it, and make it brand new. Not the building itself, but the inner spirit, drive, and understanding of the nature of the temple. But at every turn he's met with opposition, and finally they're remarking about how beautiful it is and all these great wonders about it. And Jesus said, "As for what you see here, the time will come when not one stone will be left on another. Every one of them will be thrown down." "Teacher," they asked, "when will these things happen? And what will be the sign that they're about to take place?" He replied, "Watch out that you're not deceived, for many will come in my name, claiming I am he, and the time is near. Do not follow them. When you hear of wars and uprisings, do not be frightened. These things must happen first, but the end will not come right away." Then he said to them, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places, and fearful events, and great signs from heaven. But before all this, they will seize you and persecute you. They will hand you over to synagogues and put you in prison, and you will be brought before kings and governors, and all on account of my name. And so you will bear testimony to me. But make up your mind not to worry beforehand how you will defend yourselves. For I will give you words and wisdom that none of your adversaries will be able to resist or contradict. You will be betrayed even by parents, brothers and sisters, relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death. Everyone will hate you because of me, but not a hair of your head will perish. Stand firm, and you will win life." Well, I was really reluctant to do this text today. And I'm sure you can understand why. How did you feel about it as I was reading it? You go, somebody's beating me over the head with how bad things are. And I asked myself, where's the good news in this? And we need to hear good news, folks. It's time. We're embarking on a new age in our nation. We have new leadership in Washington. We have new leadership in our state. Well, some. And we have new leadership locally. And it's just a time also when we see a lot of division and pain in our nation. And we need some good news. Something, hopeful today. And not this stuff about how terrible and calamitous it's going to be and the tribulation that's coming. So I really thought, man, I'm not in the spirit of this at all. I'm very hopeful. And I've been looking this week for all kinds of signs of hope for our future as a country and as a church. And I'm finding them. God's been good. And I'm just really hopeful and feeling good about it all. So it was really hard to put together some kind of sermon on this. It just reminds us too much of what we've seen and been through. I mean, ISIS, wars and rumors of wars and all this terrorism and all this death and all this kind of stuff and, shootings and violences and killing and all that. It just reminds us of everything we've been through. And I think it doesn't help. Did it help you alleviate fears as I was reading it? Or did it kind of provoke some anxiety, kind of get your stomach to turn a little bit as I was going through it? As I was reading it this week, it kind of did that for me, and I was trying to figure out where in the world I would go with that. Now I had a choice. I could have just abandoned it entirely and gone with any other text, or I could have gone with any of the other texts that are texts for the day. There's a guide. It's called the Lectionary, and it prints texts for every day to read. And then on Sunday you have a psalm, an Old Testament reading, or a Hebrew Bible reading, or a Tanakh reading, whichever word you want to use. And then we have a New Testament reading, and then which is an epistle, one of the letters or other New Testament books, and then we have a gospel reading. So there's about 4 every Sunday. And I could have chosen one of the other 3, but I just kept getting drawn to this. And one thing, and I think I kept getting drawn to it, just resisting it. Does that make sense to you? That you're resisting something, but you're still drawn to it? You keep wrestling with it? Maybe if I'd have just given up the fight and walked away from it, we would be preaching about something else today. But I kept engaging, trying to say, no, wait a minute, hold on. I don't want to do this. I don't want to talk about this stuff. I mean, Jesus speaks of a future that he says we need to be prepared for, and a lot of the other the rest of the New Testament says we need to welcome, embrace, and pray for. Come, Lord Jesus, Maranatha. And I think it's a future that most of us hope will never happen in our lifetime. Not with all those calamities and such, right? And then how can you be prepared for pain and suffering? It's 1944. My mother's in the kitchen. Dad's out in the garage. There's a knock at the door. Mother goes to open the door. There are 2 military officials with an ominous envelope. And she collapses to the floor because she knows immediately what it means. Now, when her son or sons went off to war, she knew that there was a possibility for that day. She knew, but she didn't know. And it's really hard to move from here to here. And it's shocking what happens in an instant. And I don't know how anybody prepares for that. My cousin Lila put my grandmother Lew Champ's diary on Facebook this last week in honor of Veterans Day. And my grandmother had 2 sons in the military during World War II. My Uncle Max and my father, who was serving in the Philippines. How did, knowing that she had 2 sons in harm's way, and something could happen to either or both of them, how did she go about the routine things of each and every day? And I was reading that diary with much interest. Noticing how she was coping with both sons away in the service. They both came back, thanks be to God. It was, my father, I know, came home with PTSD. He was a very, very, very angry man for such a long period of time. And he saw things that he would never tell any of his children about. I never knew anything about his war experience. He wouldn't share with any of us children. He shared it some with a couple of grandsons, and it must have been pretty awful in the Philippines. How do you prepare for stuff like that? And we certainly wouldn't welcome it. As great as that time was, and the years that followed, as much as it brought us together, and as a nation we faced a challenge together, and we felt like we were one nation in the community. Would any of you want those days back again? And so, I don't understand. It's doom and gloom here in this passage, it seems. And who needs more of that? Just today, well, first of all, I have to acknowledge, though, and I hope you see it perhaps this way too. We're already living through a lot of this. The very things that Jesus talked about. Wars and rumors of wars. Earthquakes. Just today, New Zealand, a 7.4 magnitude earthquake. Their last was 6.8, and hundreds of people died. And now 7.4. And we know in Oklahoma and places in our nation, there are earthquakes all the time now. And so a lot of what Jesus had to say in that text, in that passage, is happening. But we're removed from it, in some ways shielded from it. And I frankly like that. Linda and I were talking last night how safe and removed in some ways. You know, we hear about the things that are happening post-election. You all have, and I don't want to rehearse those. But, you know, here we are in Sterling, and it just felt kind of good to be, you know, a little bit secure and safe and removed from all of that. And life to be a little quieter here. And it seems just good, you know. And I don't know what that says about me at this point in my life, but at 64, I'm starting to see things a little differently. So, you know, it's that sort of thing. And I can hear about ISIS, but I'm not in the middle of what ISIS is doing. And Chelsea went behind all those refugee camps, as many of you know. She's going to be here the first Sunday in December to bring her video and visit with you about what happened in the refugee camp. Terrific stories. But she was over there and she saw all of that. That's where young people go and do these things. You know, when you get to be my age, you're kind of glad to step back and let them do it again. And I'm just not up there face to face with all this stuff, the war and the violence and the rumors of war and the violence. And I live in a pretty safe and secure place. And so I'm getting comfortable. And when Jesus says, in more ways than one, certainly in this text for today, but in other places as well, what he says in more ways than one always disturbs my comfort. But I still think we preach good news. And as I went through all this, wrestling and sharing with you all the things I engaged with in dialogue with the text about, I kept looking for the good news in the text. And then all of a sudden it was there. I saw it. I saw it. First of all, it's a text with a promise. In verse 9, don't be frightened of any of this. Man, you know, there's a reality to this for us, and we're going through some of it, to some measure, around the world, and it can't help but affect us. You know, to hear of the things that are happening in other places and within our cities and in our nation. It can't help but affect us. And as we look to our future, I'm sure it's with some anxiety. How can we bring jobs back to America? How can we get people working again? How can we relieve the poverty, and much of it in our inner cities among white blue-collar workers? How can we do any of these things and get our nation going forward? And maybe we're a little anxious and concerned about all of it, you know? And Jesus says in verse 9, don't be frightened. And in verse 14 he says, but make up your minds not to worry. He says, don't be frightened, and make up your minds not to worry. Because he promises in verse 15, I will equip you for everything you're going to face. And I will be with you through it all. You will not walk alone. What a great assurance that is. When I feel most alone, maybe I'll go back to these words of Jesus that says, whatever challenge you're facing, I will give you the words to speak. I will give you the courage to face it. I will give you what you need. I will equip you for the hour of whatever you face. You won't be alone. You won't be alone. And then he said, not a hair of your head will perish. Stand firm. and you'll win life. And I think these are powerful, powerful promises. Tex Sample taught at St. Paul's Theological School in Kansas City, and he had a course on American diversity. And he comes from Louisiana in a very blue-collar background and an impoverished home. And he talks about all of the people of his growing up years, aunts and uncles and that extended family. And they're all a little bit weird, but everybody's weird. And we just have our own special brand of weirdness. And he talked about their values. He had an aunt that, if you ask her, do you believe in gay marriage? She said, oh no, it's an abomination before the Lord. And the other thing, what do you think about homosexuality? Oh, it's an abomination before the Lord. But there were two unmarried guys living together down the street, and people had asked them in Louisiana, and she'd say, I just wish they would leave those guys alone. They're so nice, and I don't understand why they're constantly picking on them. People should just let them be. They have a right to live however they want. Now, in the abstract, if you ask her about gay rights and all that kind of stuff, she'd say, oh, an abomination before the Lord. But when it came to personal relationships, you know, she loved them. She cared about it. She could embrace it. Tex said, that's America. You know? He wrote the gospel for blue-collar workers, and it was great. He talked about this diversity class, and he had members of the class preparing for ministry. And one of the assignments was going to be that they would go to this honky-tonk country western bar on a Friday night. And they would observe, you know, he wants them to observe what some might call redneck culture, I don't know, Texas and Louisiana. Anyway, he wanted them to observe this culture. Well, a couple of the black African-American seminarians came up to him and they said, we are aware of this bar, and you are aware we cannot go there with you. And he said, why? Yeah, we would not be welcome. And it could get ugly. And he didn't know. He didn't have any clue. And he stepped back and he thought, and he said, we gotta go. We gotta go as a group. What are we gonna do? I said, I don't know. I just need to have you go. He says, I'll be there. I'll be with you. And I promise you this, if there's any danger, if anybody threatens you, I'll take the first punch. I'll stand with you. It was a marvelous experience. They went. It was an all-white bar, and when they walked in, and that was, he wanted to have them have that socio-cultural experience. And when they walked in, you know, all eyes turned to the door, and it got quiet. But they came in, and they sat down, and they ordered to drink whatever they wanted to drink. And the music started up again, and everybody at that point just went on having a good time. And then there was one very large African-American woman, you know, very well endowed, very large. And she just decided she was going to get out on the dance floor and have a good time dancing. And boy, she did. And boy, all of them were out there just cheering her on and dancing with her. And they were just out there, and the lights were flashing. And he said, here were black and white and Hispanic, and they were having a good time, dancing and enjoying one another. And he said, it was like a mighty wind rushed through that place. And I heard, I mean, they were speaking all kinds. There was Texas, there was Southern slang, there was Northern talk, and there was African American jive and all that kind of stuff. And the room was just full of all these different languages, and it was like all these tongues had descended upon this group. And he said it was Pentecost all over again. And he says, that's America. That's America. Well, I told you that because he promised to stand with them. They were frightened. He promised to stand with them, and that promise meant so much. But I also tell you that because when we risk going forward in spite of our fears and Jesus goes with us, that's what happens. We are brought together. Peace is made. We become one. And it's like Pentecost all over again. And I think that's going to happen in our country.